Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. This is ZENcast Live, and happy to be here today. Today we're going to be covering ZCM bundles, and it's going to be specifically on 23.4. But more so, the bundles we'll have a guest, Craig Wilson, tech support backline engineer. He's been on before. He has some great knowledge. If you've dealt with anything regarding bundles and had to call support, you probably have spoken to him. We're going to go over to the lab and see what we have. But let's first go into a little bit of house cleaning today, housekeeping, and things to get done. First off, what is ZENcast Live? It's for ZENworks administrators or the ZENworks community or anybody involved or even thinking about what ZENworks is about. We cover different topics each week. Dates the first and third Tuesday of every month, and it's at 9 o'clock Mountain Time. So we appreciate you being here. You'll find a full list on the Support and Training YouTube channel. You could see all the past recordings as well. A little bit of house cleaning. If you get a chance, log into YouTube. You can chat live. You can ask questions, even if they're on topic, off topic. You could subscribe to notifications so that you get alerted when we are going live, and then provide some feedback. If you're watching the recording, provide feedback, comments, likes, unlikes, so forth. Make sure that we're on track with this particular forum. The description, if you're watching the video, the description will have links to this download and links to references and other PDFs during this presentation. I'm going to post in the chat today's presentation so you can either follow along or download it if you're watching this recording. A little bit of tidbits and crumbs. The TIDs out here are the latest TIDs. There's been a lot of new TIDs coming in. One of them is ZCC Helper URL shortcuts. If you download this particular PDF, you'll be able to get the links to all of these. So if these pertain to you, be aware that they're out there so it can help you in your environment. A little bit of bits is there are discussions going on about applying blank Win GPOs or not applying blank Win GPOs. So check our forums out there regarding that. Other discussions about Distribute Action and Surface Pro, Pixie with ZCM. Just things out there that may pertain to what you're experiencing and actually might provide a fix for you. There's other things like if you're doing debug logging, you can there's a master debug logging reference. And then the ZSD customization cookbook has been updated quite a bit. There's 10 more TIDs out here that are related. I had to reorganize this a little bit more because there are so many references here, but I kind of put it in a little bit more organization. So we have a lot more references for you, both in the master debug logging reference and the customization cookbook. Very, very helpful as you're troubleshooting in ZCM. A few crumbs. Be sure to double check your monthly webinar topics. They're coming up for webinars, and what's been recorded, you can go to those references. There is a ZSD blog about the how Service Desk transfer road network management. So there's some blogs out there. Be sure to check the portfolio blogs, as well as there are blogs regarding the ZENworks releases. Okay, so those are out there as well. Let's see. Open Text World is coming April 15th through the 18th over in Europe. So be aware that that's there. If you're able to attend, that's great. They might even have some online. You can register and see what's going on in that arena during that week. Also, a few did you knows. ZCM 2020 U3 lifecycle ended January 31st. Okay. Also, ZPM patch feed ends May 31st. So if you're on the old patch, make sure you get on the new advanced patch feed. There are videos out there. We had Darren on. He showed us how to do that. There's some videos on how to do it, as well as good documentation on taking care of that. So be sure to double check what's going on with your patch feed. Make sure you get off of it before May 31st because you want to make sure that you don't have a stoppage of your patching. And then ZCM Windows primary server, end of life. Okay, end of life for a Windows primary server as an OS. You still have support on 23.4 through November 2026. So you have a couple of years. You can stay on 23.4 if you're migrating off your Windows primary server. So it's not a cold hard date as far as getting off this year, but you'll remain on 23.4 until you get all your Windows primary servers out of your zone. And again, those are primary servers, not managed servers. And then there should be coming out a primary server migration tool if you have a lot of those. But be sure to know that you won't be able to upgrade. The upgrade to 24.2 will say you still have a Windows primary server in your zone. You need to remove it before you go to the next version. So be aware that that's in the list of things to do if you have Windows primary servers. Okay, they are still managed servers, just not as a primary server in the zone. And then the ZSD, we had some calls coming in to support about the ZSD appliance. First release of the year is a side-by-side migration. There's videos out there. There's a lookbook. You can see quite a few things as far as how to migrate. If you go out to the ZENworks service desk forum, and you'd be able to see the version currency and how to upgrade to the latest. Okay. Let's see what else we have. A little recap last week. We had Darren on. He talked a little bit about anti-malware. It's been a couple years since we had him on for malware. So we learned some new things. We talked about the ZAC command, malware commands, ZAC ZENinfo, how it collects different of the malware logs, as well as the primary server anti-malware logs, where are they, and so forth. Again, there's that ZENworks master reference log that has anti-malware in it, so you can do your debug logging here. Okay. So let's get to today's presentation or demonstration. We are going to be covering ZCM bundle creations or building. We're going to talk a little bit about Windows Store, maybe some simple ones, complex bundles, PowerShell scripts, MSIs, what to do and not do. There's things in there like bundle variables and command line parameters, success return codes, how to deal with those. You could pretty much, anything you can do manually, you could do with ZENworks and more. And I say more because you have system requirements and all of those things that you could double check. But the most important thing is test. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Craig Wilson, who is our Backline Tech Support for ZENworks. And let me bring him on. Craig, how are you?
Oh, fine. Good.
Great. Good to have you on again. I appreciate you taking the time and giving us a little bit of show on what's going on with the ZENworks bundles. I'm going to go full screen, but I do want to let my audience know that there's resources for bundles that I listed here, and it's in the PDF about running PowerShell scripts and support tips, deploying Microsoft Store. These are all blogs and discussion points that Craig and other support people have put into the TID arena so that you can reference those. But I'm going to go full screen so we get a little bit better view of what's going on your screen. So great, Craig. So I asked you, we had some actual requests on PowerShell scripts and bundle building and different variations in things. And since you're on the support side, it would be great to know what you've seen and would like to view for, or like to tell us about what you've seen come in that might help everybody give a little bit of knowledge so that they can troubleshoot on their own and take care of it before they have to call you.
Okay. Well, I just shared a link to you, Paul, which I don't think everyone can see, but it's basically a bookmark to a bunch of articles I wrote, and many of the things I discussed today might have more comprehensive articles as well as these same bundles that users could get if they want.
I'll go ahead and put that in the chat, but I also put it on my presentation. Okay. So yes, thank you for adding that.
Okay, so the first thing Well, some people ask about doing applications from the Windows Store. And basically, yes, ZENworks can install applications from the Windows Store. We basically just use a built-in Windows tool called Winget. It's the basic same exact process you would use if using even Microsoft's native tools. They tell you to run Winget. You make a script and you run Winget. So we're basically doing what they do. And I just have a couple sample bundles here. I can install Firefox. And so it's basically, I don't have Firefox on my primary servers. There's no, it's not in the content repo. It's not on a share. I'm actually pulling it directly from Microsoft. And so this bundle is just going to basically install Firefox and then launch Cool Solutions. And then I have another bundle that's an example of why it's critical. A customer had a bundle called DigiTrack. The only place they could get it was the Windows Store. So they can't download it, and install it manually because it's only one place in the world. And basically, and there's nothing all that difficult about these. I mean, you need to know a little bit, and there's sample bundles in an article. But if I just go into Store Apps and I go to DigiTrack, I go to Actions, it's actually a PowerShell script. And it just basically runs Winget, and then I use a variable, and then just agreements. And then I think for settings here, for system variables, I just set the store app variable. And I do that because,
Craig, can you increase your visibility just a little bit?
Yeah,
yeah, that'll be helpful. There, a little bit. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. That'll help our audience.
Yes. And so basically, and I did that to make it easier to work with the bundle. So if I wanted another Windows Store bundle, I'd make a copy of this and update the variable here versus going into the script and editing it.
So you can actually dig into the store, not having any content, just the references, and be able to install directly from the store. That's awesome.
Yeah. So and I could be, I don't even need any contact at a ZCM server of any kind because, as long as I get the bundle, when I refresh, I'm in the office and I refresh, I get the bundle, I could take my laptop and I could be on the beach somewhere without any DMZ server of any kind and install these applications.
Excellent.
So that would be, that's all it, so that's all that does. There's a couple things to point out. Some Windows bundles need to run, some Windows Store apps need to run as user and some need to run as system. And how they're executed is slightly different, but so the DigiTrack one I showed you was fairly simple. Can I lose my? So if I go down to the store apps and DigiTrack installed per user, but for Firefox, it gets more complex because it needs to run as system. And
so basically elevated.
Well, yes, except that Winget doesn't run easily from the system space. Well, one, it cannot run as DAU. It's just because the way Winget installs, it's only functional after a user logs in, so it won't work with DAU. And for system, it's not in the path. So you actually need to have a little script that basically searches for Winget and then runs it. So basically, with the user, you just run something like this. But to get it to run as system, we need to add in some extra code to tell it to find the Winget because it's installed, not always installed to the same location.
Right. System won't have that path that the user has.
Right. So so that's just one of the little caveats. But also, there's one other thing I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I made an article about it it turns out that Microsoft recently had a bug in Winget so that Winget no longer trusts the Microsoft Store cert, and so it can't even update itself. So I actually made a bundle to actually update Winget itself. But I don't want to. There's an article about how to do that, but I also want to play with it more until before I, because it may change. Because I just discovered this bug yesterday, and I was trying a bunch of fixes on different sites, and some work, some don't. In fact, most don't.
Oh, so they needed the new Winget in order to.
Yes, yeah, because Winget couldn't even fix itself because it stopped trusting the Microsoft Store. So usually it self updates, but
Yes.
Winget goes to Microsoft Store and updates itself. But they had a bug where it can no longer talk to the Microsoft Store,
Oops.
so it couldn't update itself. Yes. So, and there's actually two install actions. One installs it to the system space, and one into the user space. So this installs twice, and that makes everything work.
Good
nice
point
and
out,
dandy.
though. Appreciate that.
Yes. So yeah. So if people are trying these bundles and are not working, let the community look for the article on how to fix Winget. And this is not something you should have to do long term, but it's the first time I ever had to do it because this is the first time they broke Winget's ability to self heal.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes. Okay. And then so now I have some other bundles here, which some people, a lot of people have get confused about using variables in bundles. So there's a sample bundle out on the community, which will basically go through and show you how to use variables with different results in different use cases. Let's say I want to use the variable username. That's the example here. Well, if I'm running to a log, I might want username to export as Craig, because I'm the one that ran it. And if the action ran as user, obviously it'll resolve as Craig. But what if I was running a dynamic administrator user? Then when username exported, it might have DAU, which is not what I want. I want it to still say Craig. Or if it ran a system, it might have my computer name, but I might not want computer name. Again, I might want it to have the name of Craig, the person logged in who clicked the icon. And so basically, and then so if I go here. Yeah, and so what I did is a sample bundle here where I give different uses. So example, regedit action, where regedit, I can have an action with regedit that pipes in literally username with the percent into the registry, or it might put my name, or it might put the computer account. Exactly this ran that system. And so this shows you how to get these registry keys, the values you want in different things. So, hey, I'm doing a regedit action. How do I make sure I get Craig or I get username? Because these are the two I would probably want, depending on the use case. Or if I was running a batch file, how do I make sure I get username if I want that? So all these different things, launch executable, because we often get calls, hey, I'm running a bundle, it represents username, and it's giving me the wrong value. Well, no, it's not. It depends on, but and this will show you for every type of action how to get username to resolve the way you want.
Excellent.
Which could either be the literal, it could be the person who's logged in, or maybe the device on which it's running on. So now there's something else for registries is sometimes people ask about how do I prompt for user information. So one useful way is a PowerShell script. And this is an example for I might want a CDF form, because sometimes there's a problem with the CDF form. A CDF form is something where you can create a form to collect information from users to store an inventory.
And this is off of the ZCM agent. You just enable it.
Right. But the problem with the CDF form is that if you configure that, then you cannot use the option to silently collect information like registry keys. Because commonly we'll want to collect registry keys from your PC and store it into inventory. But if you have CDF forms enabled, that form comes up every time you go to collect the CDF data, and it's a problem. So you can't really use a CDF form if you're using solid data collection. So I basically made one here where I can just replicate the same data, and I can put Greg and put my age, a social security number, and I can pick a favorite vegetable. And there's an article that shows you how to modify the script, and the script is sort of uh, as you change things, it'll change dynamically. So, like if I were to disable the collection of age, the form would resize, or if I added a new field, it would resize.
Oh, okay.
So it's really easy to go in and modify all this stuff. So I put this information in, and I say okay, and then now I go back and I run regedit, and again, and then so I'm using the same field, and all that information is now stored, and it can now be collected silently with the ZENworks inventory.
ZENworks inventory. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this could appear on the inventory form.
Right. Right. So yeah. So that was the idea, because you can't use the form and registry collection at the same time, because otherwise the form comes up every time. So this would be a way to have both.
Append to that form. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So instead of using the form, you just have a bundle.
Yep.
So when instead of calling the form up, you call this bundle, and then you just put in the data they want, and it's there to be collected.
And what's in that bundle again? Oh, you keep going. Keep going.
Yeah. It's just it's a fairly complex PowerShell script. But if you go to my list of articles, it's out there, and it describes in great detail how it works. But
Thank you.
But now, sometimes I have problem customers, and what they do, they go, well, we've got the security department, and our security department does not let us run PowerShell scripts. Yeah, we all hate those security people. Not really, but okay. So now I'm going to go to script execution, and I'm going to say disabled. So I can either say enabled and say only signed scripts, and this will break ZENworks, as well disabled. And I'll just sort of show disabled for now. It'll both fail, but we will get just the error is a little different. So I now go to run this same bundle, and it'll come up, and it'll say warning, scripts are disabled on this system. If I had required signed, it would say failed, scripts need to be signed. But again, we can get around that. So I have an alternate bundle that runs basically the same script, but it works even though PowerShell scripts are disabled. And so I can put pass 1111 and go to broccoli. I'll say okay. Back to regedit. And boom, I now have my new values. And so the difference is the second bundle doesn't technically run a PowerShell script. What it does is it runs a PowerShell command. So when you block scripts, you don't block the command. So, it starts a PowerShell prompt. It then issues a command to read the text file, which is the script as a text file, and then pipe the data into the command prompt. So it's very similar to basically if you just opened PowerShell window and typed in the commands, or actually pasted in PowerShell script. Because blocking PowerShell scripts does not block typing in the command line or just pasting in the script. And for the most part, scripts will just work as is. In this one example, I need to make a minor change where I made some local variables, global variables around the button, because the OK button and cancel button weren't working. So, this is a fairly complex script, and it still worked without any real coding change. So there's a good chance most PowerShell scripts you have will work with the alternate method if you're in a lockdown environment.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you have a PowerShell script that's 20, if you have a 20-page long PowerShell script with 50 procedures, it might fail. But this one Mine uses procedures and it still works. So
Brilliant.
yeah, okay. Now there's another type of bundle that I'm not really going to show you much, but it actually does absolutely nothing. The only this bundle is a bunch of system requirements. And so we a lot of times we'll get a call going, I want to know which of my machines are properly encrypted. Unfortunately, we don't report that in the ZCC. So a lot of times we go, and the answer to that is what you can do is make a bundle. Let's see, bundles that just has system requirements, and then you can check the status in here. So I can go to the dashboard and look at a bundle, and basically, if a device is not effective, it's effective. The way I decided, effective means you're encrypted. Not effective means you should be encrypted, but you're not. And then these pending, they just haven't checked in. This is a lab zone, so clearly a lot of stuff hasn't checked in.
Right.
And so what I do, so I go for requirements, and I have two conditions. One, QT should be set. The percent progress should be 100. That means the device, the last encryption action completed 100%, so it's encrypted. And the operation in progress is a 1. So a 1 is an encryption process. So the last thing it did was encrypt, and it got to 100%. So boom. So that's a good state that passes. Now, the alternate thing that will pass is if there is no last policy. So if a policy is not defined, it's not going to flag it for an error. So if I have so it will only say machines are in a failed state if they're assigned a policy and the device is not encrypted. So now the reason this one fails is because I actually have a policy here. Let's see. I don't know what that is. Where did I go? Okay, well, but basically, if I look on my machine, I actually have an FDE policy called no FDE, and basically the only drive it sets to encrypt is drive Z. So when I assign that, it actually will go through. There's no drive Z, so it doesn't encrypt anything, so it doesn't get any percentage. But also any other drives that are encrypted, such as C, will decrypt. And so since that's assigned, I'm failing because I have no successful encryption. And actually, the last thing it did was decrypt drive C. So it fails for a number of reasons. The reason I have this policy, I'm going to jump over to FDE real quick, is there is a setting you can set in a policy called lockdown. And so when the lockdown option is set for FDE, the only way a drive will decrypt is if you manually tell it to decrypt. What this does is fixes an issue that some customers have where for some reason, for like 2 seconds, ZCM thinks you don't have a policy, so it'll decrypt. So we get flapping. Your drive encrypts, it's fine, and then one day it decrypts and recrypts again. So there is a lockdown setting so that the only time it will decrypt is if you manually tell it to decrypt. That's kind of a pain to do that. So what I did is I created a second policy called no FDE. So what I do is I just remove the one policy, but now it doesn't decrypt because of the lockdown setting, but I assign it to no FDE policy. So now it actually will enforce a policy which tells it to decrypt. That's just a little easy way to, it's an easy way to force decryption of your devices while also ensuring there's no accidental decryption.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, but that generates an error. Okay. So now and sticking with FDE, I have another bundle called FDE remediation that fixes a lot of known issues around FDE. So let's see, is that? Oh, I'm not in bundles. Okay, with bundles. FTE, and it basically runs a set of actions that might cause FDE to fail. The first thing it does a couple of registry keys. And it doesn't really apply to, well, so there's one that turns off automatic BitLocker encryption, because if your drive is BitLocker encrypted, then you can't do ZCM encryption. But this key doesn't force it to decrypt; it just prevents the automatic encryption. And then it sets a couple of registry keys to skip certain over-aggressive system requirement checks. That probably doesn't apply to 23.4 because I think we removed those checks. And then there is basically a second PowerShell command that issues a it's a PowerShell command that will decrypt BitLocker. And again, this is another example of how to do PowerShell. And I did this for customers who have scripts blocked. So basically, I just run PowerShell.exe, and then I have one command, semicolon, second command. And so this will, I can issue two commands from the command line. And so
Now I noticed you had the star on the success codes on that one. I didn't know that was
yes,
a one you could do, so it
yes,
just bypass all success return
yes.
codes.
So any return code is good. So sometimes I do that because I don't really.
Yeah, because there could be
Oh,
a list of them, but yeah.
yeah,
Okay, I had never seen the star there before. Perfect. Thanks.
yeah. Okay, and so yeah, okay, so that's another bundle that I often share. There was actually, while I'm thinking about it before, I'm going to restore my policy. So, let's see, and there is another. Well, obviously, this is just a very simple bundle. I always recommend is just create a bundle that runs as dynamic administrator. That way, you can see what you know. If you're trying to run something as DAU, you're going, well, why is DAU failing? You can kick off a command prompt as DAU, and you can sort of see differences.
Then manually run through the
Yeah,
commands.
yeah. So like you can do a net use. What happens? Do I have access to a share and anything else like that? So it actually emulates that. There is another bundle I have here. I'm not actually going to run it because it probably won't work because I need to tweak it for my environment. But what it does is, okay, so let's say that you have 10 office locations and you want to install your bundles from a shared drive instead of the content repository. The problem is, how do I make my bundle point to the correct location based upon where my laptop is? So if I'm in location A day one and I go to location two and run an install, how does it know which share to hit? And so what this does is this sets a variable based upon my location and then defines that to be a share. So if again I go back into here, go to bundles, and so I'll just show the bundle, but my shares and stuff may not be actually up. So what this does, the first thing it does is a script, and again, this is an article, but basically I read the registry, I read my location data, and then I use a switch command, and then depending on which location I'm in. So if I'm in Charlotte, it will set the variable local share to one. So depending on where I am, I get different shares.
Yeah.
And then it sets the variable ZCM source, and then it will, and then in your bundles, you just need to run this. Yeah, so you go in here, you update the switch for every location you have and the share there, and then you just set this bundle to run on refresh. Because every time your location changes or your network connectivity changes, a refresh will happen. So if I close my laptop and I go from location A to location B, I open the laptop up, it will refresh and the variable update. And so then when I install, I get the new location. So, yep. And then there's just a couple actions, and this second action broadcasts the variable to Windows Explorer and other running processes. Because I don't know if you ever noticed this, but like if you go to sometimes if you go to the command prompt and set a variable, it's not effective right away in all your um, applications.
Yeah,
So but
yeah. They
and
don't
so
show
what
up
this
for
does, yeah, is this will so
that'll force it.
yeah, so I set it, but when that runs, Windows Explorer doesn't know the variables has changed, so it's not going to use a new variable. And then the second command, it is some Windows code to alert Explorer to the new variable. So
I noticed that one has some requirements on it, the second one.
let's see. Yeah, let's see. Actions. I'm gonna look at this a while. Install, launch. I go. I go. And just make sure that this is a common one I use log on server. It's just a way if that variable exists, that means someone's logged on. So
Yep.
I'm not going to bother. I'm not going to bother trying to broadcast the variable if no one's logged on.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yes. So if I'm carrying my laptop around, but I'm not logged in, it'll update the variable, but it's not going to try to update Windows Explorer. There's no need because no one's logged in. And and there's one other thing in there just to note is a lot of times if you run, I don't know if it still does this, but if you run actions on refresh, there's a chance that they might double run in some cases. Because if you'll notice, so let's say if you unplug and you go from location A to location B, you'll be location A, and then it goes to unknown, then it goes to location B, kind of in rapid order.
So if you're like disconnecting your network card and it picks up the Wi-Fi, now you're on a different location, possibly.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but it'll go from location A to unknown location B.
Right.
Right. And this kind of prevents it from double running. So,
Gotcha.
by having the extra delay there, or a lot of times you have something to run on refresh plus 1 minute.
Sure.
Because I want this to be very fast, I don't want to add on refresh plus 1 minute. I want it to run on a refresh immediately.
Right.
But the 1 second delay kind of ensures it doesn't double run. So yeah, I think that was most of the bundles that I had just called out to demonstrate. So I don't know if questions or
no questions coming in yet. So if you are on live, go ahead and send your questions in, and we'll get those answered by Craig, or at least investigated. So some of how often do you find, because when I started as a customer, I just did bundle installs and I didn't do any checks or uninstalls. I mean, it's best to complete your bundle with an uninstall as well, right? I mean, it does all depend, but if you're installing a PDF reader and you update it, once a year, it's easier to just link that bundle and uninstall it using the bundle properties, right?
Yes and no. I actually would rather not have any uninstall actions, and I might add them. But the reason being is when I was an administrator, no one ever yelled at me because there was an old application on the PC. But people get really upset when I uninstall something I'm not supposed to.
Good
For
point.
example, I had a customer. They went in and they made they had a Microsoft Office bundle, installed Office, and they go, you know what? I'm going to recreate my Office bundle. So they made a new bundle and then unassign the old one and assign everyone the new one. But because they already had Office, the new bundle didn't run. But about a week later, Office started removing off every single PC in the organization.
Oops.
Just yeah. I mean, it's the kind of thing all of us can do. I mean, it's just we've all been there, and we're all going to do something silly like that. So I tend to avoid the uninstall actions. I mean, they're great, they're useful, but if you add it, I tend not to like have it be automatic. So maybe I can forcibly run if I have the uninstall action, and then maybe cause something like a bundle uninstall. So then
Something else to break.
tell them right. So I can tell it to uninstall if I want to, but it won't do it automatically.
Right.
I'm always afraid, because I'm less than perfect, that I'm going to do something and start pulling off a mission critical application of all the PCs because I just unassigned it so I can assign a new version, and I didn't really think in the back of my mind, oh, this is going to start uninstalling software.
And that's again where I think we go. As an administrator, we need to know our products, right, that we're installing, and even the uninstall actions, the MSIs and those types of things, so that you can know what behavior happens with those installs.
Yes, I'm trying to remember. There is, and I don't even remember where the setting is, but I don't mess with it that much. But but there's a setting where you can control, the uninstallable bundles. But there is another setting which you might want to be aware of. Is we added something where how many versions of a bundle you want to retain. A lot of times it's good to maybe just retain, you pick number 3, 4, 5. But that way, if you have a bundle with 50 versions, you're not keeping all those versions in the database.
It'll clean it up.
It'll clean the content up, or even the details about the actions. Because that can save you space in both your database and the content repo.
Well, that's good. I wasn't aware that was there because even each version, if you upload something, it's in the repository tied to that GUID. But as you get higher in replacing that, the others, even though you're not using it, it still retains in the content repo, unless you clean it out.
Right. Yeah. So if I had a application like GIMP, I don't know, and every month I go out and I make update my GIMP bundle to give me the new GIMP application. And if I don't delete the old versions, I'm going to have, 10, 15, 20, 30 copies of GIMP that I'm not using in the content repo. And with this, it will just, after you go through so many versions, it will just delete the old versions. And you want to make sure that you have enough versions that, if you're filling with stuff, you can still get back. But,
and to show the audience, the bundles, you're referring to the versions. If you go to a bundle and then show us a list of versions, you have 5 in there now.
Yeah, so if I go to, PowerShell, some of these probably have a lot of versions. So so there's 10 versions, and I could go back to any of these.
Yeah.
But tomorrow, there'll be an overnight process. So if I leave things as they are, tomorrow when I come back, I'll only see like versions 5 through 10 or 6 through 10 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So it has an auto cleanup. That's a great new feature.
Yeah. So
and on so let's talk a little bit about system variables. What examples of system variables do you have? Because you could put a global variable in, or
okay. Well, when I go back to the bundles. This is one example for the store apps. It wasn't global, but I went to the. Actually, was it here? There's a track where I just went to settings, and so this is variable. It's set. The store app is set right there in the app, and so I could set it at a higher level. But example, I might have a Windows share, so I might have a variable called data center Windows. I have a variable called Windows share. So I have a global Windows share variable.
Right, or corporate share.
And I set a variable called corporate share. I set that variable at a high level and then in every bundle, I'd put corporate share. And that way, when we move the corporate share to a new server, I just change the one
Global.
variable, one global variable, instead of changing it, in every single application.
And the global one is that inherited variables you're referring to, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it could be set in different locations. So I could go back here, uh, and I could set
To
it
the folder
to
level.
let's store apps. Yeah. So I could go in here and let's see where bundles. I don't know if I can set it. It might just be on like device bundles. So if I go here, workstations, details, settings.
Yeah.
Yes, system variable. Yes, it's on device folders. So
Yeah.
I might have. So like I could go to the New York folder and set some kind of share variable in the New York folder as well as any other folder I had,
All
and
the
then
way
it
to the
would
top.
change.
Yeah.
It would change depending on the device. So each device folder would point to a different share. So you'd
So
have one bundle that points to a share variable, but depending if it was in the New York device folder or outside device folder or whatever, you know.
and I remember a saying we used to have is closest to the device wins. So
Right. Yes.
whichever one's closest, it inherits it to that level.
Right.
Awesome. Okay. No questions coming in at this time from the audience. So what other? So we talked a little bit about bundles. Let me get my screen back up here. Let's go back. Oh, let's cover a little bit on MSI. You got an MSI bundle?
I don't know if I can't. I may or may not have any MSI bundles because they're kind of. Let me see what I got here.
They're EXE launchers, huh?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I just because
So
a lot of times
if we
my
created a new
bundles are
MSI
built in.
bundle real quick, a test one, there are parameters in there that, oh, you might have one.
Yes. Yeah. So no, I don't think I have. Most of mine are. Yeah, I don't think off the top of my head. I don't know if I have any MSI bundles.
Okay. Well, I could cover
Yeah,
that in a different
yeah.
episode.
Good. You can show one, yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you have one that you can. Oh, there we go.
There you
Oh,
go.
that browser. Okay. So yeah. So and you primarily get this if you do an install MSI. If you do a network MSI, these options might not be aware, but when you do an install MSI, we actually read the MSI and then read every possible property which you can then configure. So, an example, so for the contact, you might want to change our contact and go, let's see, our contact, and I could
Oh,
then
sure.
say, all that micro focus type, right? And so now, when this application installs, and they actually pull up like the help window, for the LDAP browser, it'll say call Paul,
Mm-hmm.
and various things like that.
And then I noticed the switches there. So how do you understand which install or uninstall switches you can use?
Well, if you go here, this will kind of give you the options for different ones. The QN gives you no output. Some other ones, you know, can be useful. A lot, yeah,
For testing, those
yeah,
are obviously
yeah,
good,
yeah.
right?
Well, and sometimes even in production, because sometimes it's nice to users to know something's installing, so they don't reboot. I mean,
Sure.
being totally invisible, that's nice, but sometimes you don't want your users reboot. If you're installing Office and it's going to take 20 minutes to install Office, you don't want your customers to reboot while Office is installing, and then you get a host install.
Yeah. And
So
I
right, so
noticed it
then
added that command down at the bottom, command line parameters.
so like so basic means there's usually no user interface, and then the plus usually at the end you say okay, you're done, and the minus it'll just run and then uninstall. I mean, it'll just install and then
Go away.
go away when it's
Yeah.
done.
So it'll give you the
Yeah,
graphical presentation, the
yeah,
UI presentation,
yeah,
but go
yeah.
disappear.
And then yeah, and something like this. So hey, I see the install running, but there's no cancel button, and this way the user's not going to reboot their machine mid-install or going,
Right.
hey, why is my machine running really slow? I'm going to call the help desk because it's really lagging. Well, it's lagging because it's installing Microsoft Office.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you found that one. That's good. And there's also, we talked yesterday, there's an MSIX, which is similar to like what they're doing with all their extensions, is adding the X on the end. That's pretty much the same you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Well, yeah, but it's there's different action. It's a little bit different, but don't. But yeah, so if you have go to bundles, I have one. You can't do a lot with it, but if I would go to the PowerShell, oh, that's not it. Not PowerShell. I want store apps. Package manager. Yeah. So one of the actions here is actually the first one, and actually for this one, when you go to download this from Microsoft Store, you go to Microsoft and download the latest version of Winget. It actually has an extension called MSIX bundle, and I just renamed it from MSIX bundle to MSIX, and it came right in. The bundle is actually a collection of individual MSIX ones, but otherwise it's separate.
It's a wrapper.
And so yeah. So and it's really, and then you can basically tell, and these is mostly like Windows Store apps, and then you can tell it to install for users, for a single user or all users. One of the only options. I've never done this, but you can actually include a certificate. So let's say that, and this might be more for in-house applications where, because you can sort of sign up one of these bundles with a certificate. So if and if you wanted to push that to devices, and those devices didn't already trust their certificate, you can include their certificate here.
For security purposes, sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably nothing that we use that often, because even if you were doing your own in-house building with your own in-house cert, you probably would deploy that cert to all your devices already anyway.
Right.
So, but it's there, but it's nothing I've used, and so.
Excellent. Well, gosh, this was a wealth of information. I really appreciate your time today on those particular details. We'll have to do it again. Follow up with some of the next time, some of the later stuff, and I appreciate everything you've presented here today, Craig. As final words, I think it's been wonderful having you aboard. Wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate your time coming on today.
Oh, well, thanks, Paul. I had fun.
Yep, and we'll do it again. Always good talking with you, Craig. This is Craig from Backline Tech Support. Again, he takes care of the bundles for you, as well as the other tech support people do as well. But he presented today on some of these. And Craig, you have a great day, and we'll catch up with you later.
Bye.
Bye. Excellent. Well, that was nice. That was good that he was able to help us there. I hope that was informative for you. I'm going to go ahead, and one thing to remember: test as you go through there. And again, the PDF has all these resources. His bookmarks are here. The ZCC helper, URL shortcuts, creating shortcuts with PowerShell, just different things that have been written up are in the list so that you have quick access to them. Some of the references: ZSD community, ZCM community, documentation for PowerShell. as we close up this session, we'll cover the schedule. Today was ZCM bundles. Next week is getting things done with ZENworks, just learning where to find learning, support, and references. So it's a place, maybe you'll find a few tidbits that actually will help you with bookmarks to be able to pinpoint what you might need, whether it's TIDs or whether it's SLD downloads, those types of things. May 7th, we're going to do ZSD What's New. We have a new product in there, as well as customizing and branding for your organization. The 21st, we're going to do hybrid workspaces use cases. And then in June, we're going to do more ZENworks bundles. All right. Be sure to register for the monthly ZENcast. There are some new links there. We do have one each Thursday of the month. I'm sorry, live casts. Those are webinars for Filer, GroupWise, ZENworks, and OES iPrint. And then if you have any questions or want to see certain things either on this forum or as a webinar, be sure to email zen@opentext.com. We'll be happy to accommodate that and fit it into the schedule. Again, if you want to see the schedule of what's coming up for the ZENcast Live, you can go out here. Here's the list of what's coming up next. And then all the past recordings are in here. And you can just search on this web page if you're looking for something in particular and find it and see that previous recording. A few things on the versions is ZCM 23.4 is out. Here's some links for those references. ZSD 24.1 is available. The announcement, what's new and how to upgrade. Appliance security updates. Remember, if you have an appliance, quarterly updates for security updates are available. Hybrid Workspaces 23.11 and ZRS 8.12 is all out there and current. These are some of the futures for ZCM, ZCM CE, ZSD 24.2, and Hybrid Workspaces, when the approximate release dates will be, as well as some of the lookbooks to give you the details of the latest. The nice thing about these lookbooks is they do have some comparison charts, so you can see what features are in each version. So if you're down a couple versions, you want to see what's coming up in a particular version, you can then go to this particular document and see those. Each one of ours has that. Each one of the lookbooks has that. And coming up is, as I mentioned, OpenText Europe is coming up. There's webinar recordings, webinar schedule on what's coming up next. Feel free to register out here so that you have notification of those. Again, the next ZENcast is Getting Things Done with ZENworks, and that'll be on April 16th. And I appreciate everybody joining us. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks. Thank you for joining. Cheers.